Wholesale.
Wholesale.
That's a Cherokee greeting, and wave the great feather for the good of it. Okay, today I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do here. My theme is Easter follow-up. The previous Coyote talk that I did was Palm Sunday, and I titled that one Yaqui Easter. And in the Yaqui ceremony, their culture that we have known for many, many years, the Easter event, or Pascua, continues past the Easter Sunday all the way until May 3rd, and that's Holy Cross Day. So I'm kind of bringing in a lot of different subjects, in this, kind of filling that out, and I don't think I've done it like this before here. And what I'm going to start with here is go up here to my painting. This painting I've titled it Santa Semana, meaning Holy Week. And every year that we attended, like 20 to 30 years, every year in the village of Guadalupe, where initially we had lived just outside of the village, and became acquainted, there, and became padrinos of the Alvarez family there. So, and then I'm saying every ceremony, like every year, it's always different. There's always something unique. It doesn't just simply repeat itself. So it's very interesting. And on this particular week that I featured in my painting here, it was very, very emotional. A very spiritual, deep emotion is the way I can refer to it. And as soon as I got home with that feeling in me, I did this painting. I did this painting of that feeling. I've never done a painting with that kind of motive before. So that's pretty much what I'm starting with here. I even have it in a Mexican frame. Santa Semana. Now I can come back here. So for Easter Sunday, which was just a week ago today, when we no longer were able to go to Arizona to attend the ceremony, we eventually have come into another ceremony. And that's where we were, last Sunday. Amadeo Rea is a ornithologist. I think he was a professor at the state college here, and he's published, written and published couple at least, wonderful books on the subject. He worked extensively with the Pima and Papago people in southern Arizona, so the book is really wonderful. And he's put together, for a few years now, this ceremony to honor the earth. So last Sunday, Claudia and I, along with Tim and David, we drove out there. It's out in the hilly backcountry of San Diego, is kind of referred to it. It's very near the little village, practically, of Yacumba, just over the hill from it. So it's a desert environment out there. And also in the pre-English or pre-Spanish times, it also was a sacred place out there. And the name Yacumba seems to refer to that there. So during the ceremony that I'm referring to here, there were over 30 people this time. And he gives an initiatory talk, and then we walk, in a very single file, in a ceremonial manner as he leads us, with sprinkling cornmeal along the way. In the Southwest, that's called wae. Wae meaning to make the way sacred, actually, and so forth, like that, until we come to an area that has been pre-prepared and used in previous years, like that. And there is a center pole there with a couple of long macaw tail feathers fluttering from it, and we all gather around in a circle, and he has already selected certain individuals that are going to do readings, and among these are the four elements, the earth and the wind and the fire and the water. And with that there are, each person has a, we call it like a prayer stick with beautiful feathers in it, that each person, plants in the quarter around the center pole that way. And this time I was next to Claudia, and she was the fire. So as it goes in sequence, each person is doing a reading in this, and then to my right there was somebody doing water, and in that the water especially was the fish is extolled for purifying the water. Now, while this was going on, there, I think Claudia nudged me, and I looked up, and up there in the sky was remarkable. There was a huge cloud all by itself, and it was in the shape of a fish. And if you can go over here, I've used this to illustrate the shape of the fish, like that had rivulets running through it. It was very well defined. It stayed there right above us in the sky. It didn't distort or blow away. I've never seen anything like it, and I could say, that spawned a little haiku for me. A fish out of water makes our ceremony wet with deep feeling. And then still focusing on that, this would be the gist of what the reading is, extolling the fish for the element of water. The spiritual essence of the fish is that it can breathe underwater. And as a supreme member of the element of water, the fish is that symbol of current and flow, living life actively within the wetness of the earth. Like a bird, it flies through the water, and it can be just as meditative in its silent stillness. So, the illustration I have here is actually a petroglyph I found in Hawaii, and then I have filled it in to simulate the way the fish hovering above us in the sky may have resembled here. So certainly a very auspicious fish. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to come to is in Mexico. I spent some time in Mexico actually. Formerly I was a student at the graduate level in Mexico. We had a campus there, my college in Oakland, Berkeley, and I decided that I would do my graduate project there in Mexico. And so that's what got me there. In other words, I had a student visa, and I was connected with the University of Morelia in Michoacan. But I had traveled there also to Mexico City a couple of times because I had decided to do my principal topic on Diego Rivera, and that's where I would find the material there. So that's what locates me there. In the meantime, I learned a lot about Mexico and ancient Mexico. And so here, I want to go up here to this mask. This is a Mexican carved mask of Quetzalcoatl. There are and have been for a long time masks made of Quetzalcoatl, and this is the most soulful one I have ever seen here. So while you're focused on that, I'm going to exactly read what I have noted down. Quetzalcoatl is the most mysterious being in the whole myth of Mexico. He is the germ, the cause of germination in a seed of the birth of an animal or a child, and of the production of ever more abundant life. He is the Osiris and even the Pan of the Western world. Quetzalcoatl is a unifying symbol, achieving the balance of opposites like of heaven and earth, male and female, and morning and evening star, Venus. And like in old Egypt with Osiris and Seth, in Mexico it is Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca. That is the conflict between them and the reconciliation, which is what gave life and movement to the universe. Then in the story of Quetzalcoatl, he incinerated himself. And when that had happened, all the birds of all kinds, they're all named in the story, rescued his heart and flew his heart up to the star planet of Venus. And that's what I have portrayed here. So, forevermore, that's where he is. Venus is called, the peace planet, the peace star, because it's retrograde and goes the opposite way and comes around to meet itself like morning, evening sort of thing. So that's the actual ancient symbol for Quetzalcoatl, whose heart is residing in Venus, or the morning star. Now, how that relates to this is that he seems to be like the Egyptian Osiris. So Osiris, the names that we use, like Osiris and Horus and Isis, these are all Greek names, and they're the most convenient for me to use here. At the time the Greeks took over Egypt, it seems that no longer there was anybody that knew how to read the ancient scripts or hieroglyphs, and that the Greeks took it upon themselves. Maybe they had a little help from Egyptians, to see what they could make out of these names, and that's how that they made up the name Osiris, and that's the one that we will stay with here. So the idea of Easter, besides being spring, is resurrection. And in the late 20th century, like after 1850 to the turn of the century, a Rosetta Stone was discovered by the Frenchman Campion, and then was possible to translate, to decipher and translate the Egyptian material. And when that had happened, it had really published by the turn of the century, more than 100 years ago now, it was totally evident that the biblical characters, the way I'll refer to them, that are the foundations in Christianity, has derived from these beings, divinities and so forth, in ancient Egypt. So that is, and was unequivocally published as such at that time. So it has been known since then there. So that the resurrection, actually then when one can open the door into ancient Egypt and open it back thousands and thousands of years, then the evolution of this being, Osiris, then, becomes evident and so forth. And to give an introduction to that, how that this first began as we could say in the plant world. Any of us who have plants in our yard, do see the cycles of that. Out in the front yard here we have California poppies that come every year at this time, and so forth. So let me read this as an introduction to Osiris that becomes anthropomorphized and does become, a deity, the practically national deity of ancient Egypt, and then is somehow transformed or extended into the later Christ. Osiris has a dual aspect. He is the principle of periodic renewal in vegetative life and the transformation of essential life into vegetative life. The rhythm of Osiris is that of becoming. That's the natural order. And the hare, they usually use the word hare for rabbit, has a dual sign, is of course his ears, and its highly developed sense of hearing. Now Osiris takes on, in this evolution, the hare or the rabbit, and he's called Un-Nefer. Un-Nefer means beautiful hair. And that's the name of Osiris when he exercises his generative power to revitalize in his earthly existence in the endless cycle of birth, life, produce, and return. So, I'm touching upon all of these things to see that how all of these are relating to this Easter, post-Easter, or Pascua, and the figure of Christ. And here, if I can go down here to my illustration here, I've replicated this. This is an ancient, of course it's ancient, anything in Egypt is ancient, painting in Egypt, and this is Osiris here, and this is his son Horus, the hawk or falcon here, who is raising him. Here's the sun, and here he's raising Osiris. So this whole play of Horus, the falcon, and Osiris, has different ways that it moves. But in this one, this is what we're looking at here. And then we can just go above that here to this image for a rabbit. It's a verdant rabbit to sort of symbolize like the vegetative life of, because the rabbit is very fertile, and is used in that sense. So here I've replicated accurately. This is Osiris as Un-Nefer, the beautiful hair. So all this, definitely has a figuration here through all of this. If we can go over here to this, I've been saying in previous weeks that people known as Indians or indigenous people in the southwest of this country and northwest Mexico have at some time derived from the Mediterranean. Cultures from the Mediterranean have been flowing into Mexico and the southwest for a long time. Even we now know that the pyramids in Mexico, which are nowhere near as old as the ones in Egypt, however, whoever engineered them used the same systems of engineering, which is considered Mesopotamian. So there is definite evidence when once that you are able to see the relations, especially in Mexico, to the Mediterranean cultures. So out here east of San Diego, the Anza Borrego Desert and so forth had been inhabited for, now archaeology has shown, 7,000 years by people the Americans call Coyote, or otherwise they are the Murowetam, the honorable people here. And the evidence of Egypt in their culture is what I have been very interested in. And here I use this figure here as Mukhat. Mukhat is the creator deity of the Coyote. And the relation here is that the attributes of Mukhat are those also of Osiris, to put it simply here. And along with him, you see a lizard. This lizard is Nawiwat, meaning lizard woman, who brought Mukad after he hatched from the egg of a spider to his divinity. In other words, how he learned his divinity. He was also incinerated, and also Coyote, in that case, ran away with his heart here. Now, going along with that, you can go up here to my illustration here. I've done a number of these illustrations over the years. Something really enlightened me, but I can't remember. It's in the back of my mind when I realized what this is. I'm trying to say, Santa Isabel is a Kumeyaay site with an Ostensia chapel there, and that's Kumeyaay. You go up over a hill, so you're going north like that, and you come into a large flat plain. This was once a very large shallow lake. The lake now is well to the west called Lake Henshaw. But in the middle of it there was a mound. And this mound is known as Wamagawini, meaning rabbit's knoll, rabbit's mound. And it is the head of Osiris. And in that, I reported on it before, his son, actually, is Horus, who separates from the head of Osiris and rises in the sky. And in this is where Coyote comes in. He raises up Coyote, that's why the footprint here, and he sees the place that has been called Kupa. But Kupa is really so Ishpeke, meaning rabbit's house. So all of this and the chant that accompanies this I'm going to speak the chant. The place where this is called Tukvarpete. Tukvarpete means the place where this happened. So this is the song about Tukvarpete. Tawam, tan pene, be bu, wakiknuk, na ite wam, Tukvarpete. Tawam, tan pene, be bu, wakiknuk, na ite wam. Translated as, look at Tukvalpiti, dancing somehow. Its face is separating. Now see it, somehow dancing, and it's blowing to rise up, and now you see. And then what was happening was, this is where Coyote sees Kupa, and there is Suishpiki, the rabbit's house. And this is from Egypt. That's what really what's amazing with that. So the rabbit's knoll, the rabbit's house, the head of Osiris, and here the Egyptian. The chant itself is practically Egyptian. So how these people know that, and how that they have kept it for so long here. So that's the way I'm tying all this together. And up here, this is a recent carved mask from Guatemala. The Guatemalans are Mayans. And this is a rabbit, with flowers all painted on him there. That's why I have it here. Now if we can go all the way over here to, this is my drawing over here. Well, in Mexico City, I had met a Zapotec woman. I was down at Cuernavaca to visit the building that Diego Rivera had built in Toltec style. And it was there where I met this woman, and somehow she recognized something of me, and she took me under her wing, and it took me right home to her family in Mexico City there. And these people actually, took me in and took care of me. They were all Zapotecs from Oaxaca. And the first thing that she did was, you need to meet, the Virgin of Guadalupe. So she took me actually to the shrine of Guadalupe and introduced me to her. And we even had a photo taken together with Guadalupe, which I've lost somewhere. And then subsequently, we traveled to their native country of Oaxaca. And in Oaxaca, she wanted to take me to special places, which mainly were churches, iglesia, there. And in this particular one I'm featuring here, it was the iglesia of what was it? Guaymanano. And in this church, I had an experience. And in this experience, I had a vision, so I can say, a vision was given to me. And I had been carrying my notebooks all the time and doing drawings like that. And I did a drawing right afterwards, outside. I sat on a bench and did a drawing. This drawing here has been derived from my initial drawing of that vision. And that's what we're looking at here. And what I make of it is I refer to this as the Toltec Christ. Christ in this sense means the ideal type of humanity, is the way I'm rendering this here. The Toltecs were an earlier people, very much regarded by later people, including the people we call Aztec, like that. They were almost, divine or supernatural people. And even in Carlos Castaneda's books of the teacher Don Juan, he calls Don Juan, and somewhere in it, himself even refers to himself as a Toltec. The name Toltec is kind of a Spanish a little bit, from Toturuca. Toturuca meaning cattails that grow in the marshes along the lakes. So that gives us an idea also. So this rendering I have done later, but inspired by what I'm telling you here, that I could look at this as the Toltec Christ, we'll put it that way. And it looks very transformative to me. My grandmother is whom I have inherited my Cherokee. The Cherokee, she's, Ida Mae Reed, or she called herself Ima Reed here. And she was a very devout practitioner of the Church of Christ scientist, or Christian Science, like that. And as I was a boy, I lived with her, and she, took me to the meetings and so forth, So I kind of seem to have assimilated a lot from that and how that relates here. Because being Cherokee, I think that she and other people will be drawn to Christian Science because it's founded by a woman, Mary Baker Eddy. And also, the deity or the main life force is referred to as universal mind here. And in the resurrection theme in Christian Science, it means a spiritualization of thought. And for me, up front here, when I remember my grandmother, I'm spiritualizing my thought. And when I hear the cooing of a dove, I'm spiritualizing my thought. Because the sound of the dove here today is the same sound when I lived with my grandmother that I would always hear. And so, with all that, let me come over here to my piece notes, right here. What I'm portraying here is that this is a figure of a Sacred Heart. It's kind of old, and here is a fountain. And what this is signifying right here is the Catholic Church of San Luis Rey has in front of it a big, old, reported a very ancient fountain, a water fountain. And as I was walking toward that fountain, a figure came up from it, appeared to me from it, and spoke to me, saying, "I am the Sacred Heart. Enter into me. This is what I'm here for." And that's what I have put together here to illustrate that spiritual event. And then above it here, I have a drawing. I like this drawing here. A little while back, Jack and I would make various forays into Baja. We had a place down there. And one of the villages, we saw a church, and we went into the church. Now, I had been in many churches, like in Mexico, there's quite a variety. And in this one, and a lot of them are dark. Only votive candles would be the only light you would see in it. And in this case, in this church, there was a life-size central figure, somehow illuminated, and this figure, and it was surrounded by foliage, like as if he was standing in a thicket of trees of some kind. And he's wearing, buckskin clothing, and has a large fringed purse, and holding a spear with a heart engraved on it. So as soon as I got back to our room there, I did this drawing of that. There wasn't anything to say who this is, but there wasn't anybody there to ask who is that. But I do like my rendering of that, whoever he is. It is probably the most different that I have seen in any church in Mexico. I haven't even given him a name. So. Now the last thing I have here is this painting I have done here. Now, while I was in Oaxaca, one of the things that I encountered, I only know how to say, this way, the Black Christ. They actually do have a name. There is more than one, but I did encounter one, and that's the way I can refer to it as a black cross, or I can call it as obsidian Father Sagrado here. So I did this painting here, and I've put my renderings of a pitachi, the mat, because in the ancient times, this is called, the mat of the four faces where the warrior is born. In other words, I lived on an island in Lake Pátzcuaro with Tarascan people, and they only slept on a platform with these mats, amazingly, like that. So that's the way I framed that. And this painting, I felt very emotional in painting it and recalling my encounter with this in Oaxaca. And so for my finishing piece, I have this reading that I've written some time ago. Okay. When is a horse not a horse? When it's only the tail of something else. Christ transfixed by a pike, writhing as the harpoon whale because of twists and turns of his figurative word, employed by his spirit to converse with his soul. Who knows who under the robe? Pull down the curtain, nobody certain. Lift up that dress to see the rest. He bleeds to fill this cup with need. I weep to squeeze his need for me. Whipped to soak a lash with pain, his body and mine makes bloody rain. The kingdom within is declared in red. And that now concludes my theme for today, the Easter follow-up. So Dios, I'm.
Dios,